Welcome to the deep dive, where we dive into the details that really matter.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. The 2024 operations of Honduras's National Electric Energy Company, ENE.
Right.
Based on, and this is pretty cool, based on their own report.
Yeah.
Someone sent this to us, actually.
Oh, cool.
I think they were curious how Honduras, generates all its power.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a pretty fascinating topic.
So today's Deep Dive is brought to you by Portal, mi empresa de inversiones urbanas y centroamericanas.
Awesome.
And we're going to unpack this whole report together, try to make sense of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Documento de Breve Operación del Mercado Eléctrico ENEE 2024.
Okay.
And it's a pretty detailed look at how they produce energy, different sources,
Right.
the transactions they go on in their energy market, buying and selling.
Right.
Plant outages, when things go wrong.
Oh, I see.
It's all in there.
Okay, wow.
So yeah.
So our mission today is to pull out the most insightful bits from all this data, right?
Yeah.
To give you a really clear picture of what the energy scene in Honduras actually looked like in 2024.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. Where does their power come from?
Yeah, great place to start. So the report breaks it down by source, and it's pretty diverse, actually.
Oh, okay.
They've got hydroelectric, thermal, geothermal, biomass, even some solar.
Wow. Okay, a lot going on.
Yeah.
So hydroelectric, that seems like a big one, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And Mezapa, that's their star player when it comes to hydro.
Okay.
We're talking about 45.2 million kilowatts produced in the entire year. That's a lot of power.
That's a lot.
And get this, there's a noticeable surge in November.
Okay.
Almost 6.4 million kilowatts just in that month.
Wow. What do you think? Is that because of rainy season or something?
Yeah, that's my guess. Honduras has a pretty distinct wet season.
Right.
So more rain probably means the rivers are flowing stronger, more power for the hydro plants.
I see. So it kind of highlights how dependent they are on rainfall, maybe.
For sure. For hydro, at least.
Yeah.
And it also shows why they need a mix of sources. What happens when the rain isn't so heavy.
Right. You got to have a backup.
You got it.
So what about the other hydro plants?
Yeah, so the report mentions a couple more. Mataras and Rio Guineo, I think.
Okay.
They're contributing too, but the details are a bit scarce.
Okay. So we know hydro's big. It's seasonal.
Right.
But now let's look at thermal energy. And the numbers there, they jump up quite a bit, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they really do. The report shows that up to November, they produced, get this, 4.9 billion kilowatts from thermal.
Whoa, that's a big jump.
Right.
That's a huge difference compared to hydro. So clearly they're relying a lot on burning fuel, huh?
Definitely. It seems to be a cornerstone of their energy strategy.
So within thermal, there's this mention of leased plants.
Yeah, those play a significant role. There's Arrendamiento Lease Danley
Okay.
and Brasavola.
Oh,
Those two really stand out.
So what about them?
Well, Danley, that one produced over 18 million kilowatts up to November.
Okay.
With a peak in May, about 4.4 million kilowatts just in that month.
Oh, interesting.
And Brasavola, even more, over 43 million kilowatts in that same period.
Wow. Do you think that May peak for Danley is it because other plants were down for maintenance or something?
It could be, yeah. Or maybe, demand was just super high in May for some reason.
Right.
Or maybe it was just, part of their contract that they had to produce more in May.
Yeah, that's true. We don't really know for sure.
Exactly. But it definitely raises some questions.
Yeah, it does. Now there's this other one, Arrendamiento Lease Santa Rosa.
Right.
But the report doesn't really say much about it.
No, not really. Which makes you think maybe it's not as big a player as the other two.
Right, yeah. Okay, so thermal is clearly a big deal.
Yeah.
It looks like they rely on it year-round. But what about geothermal? They mentioned that too, right?
They do, yeah. It seems like they're using this renewable source quite a bit.
Oh, cool.
Mostly through geoplatenaries. They generated over 241 million kilowatts by November.
Well, not bad.
Not bad at all. It's not as much as thermal, obviously, but it's a good chunk of clean energy.
Right, and it's a lot more stable than hydro.
Exactly. It helps them diversify,
Yeah.
not be so reliant on fossil fuels.
That makes a lot of sense. And biomass, what about that?
Biomass, yeah. There are a few plants doing that.
Okay.
Tres Vallis, CAHSA, and Azunosa, which is also known as IHSA. But Seltzer, that's the one that's really producing a decent amount.
Okay.
They had over 114.6 million kilowatts up to November.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah, so they probably have a larger plant or maybe just better access to biomass resources than the others.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, solar power. That
Yeah.
seems to be like a newer thing for them.
Yeah, it looks like it's starting to ramp up, but it's definitely still small compared to the others.
Okay.
Most of it seems to be coming online around July.
Okay, why July?
Well, that's when they have the most sunshine, right?
Right.
So it makes sense that solar production would pick up then.
It does, yeah. And the report mentions a couple of plants, right?
Yeah, it does. Enerbesa, specifically their Pavana solar plant, and Centroamericana Marcovia. They're the ones leading the solar charge, it seems.
So you're saying that for me, someone who, follows energy trends, this growth in renewables, the geothermal and the solar, that's something to keep an eye on.
Oh, absolutely. It's still early days, but it's definitely a sign of things to come. Honduras is starting to embrace cleaner energy sources, and that's a positive development.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so we've got a pretty good idea of how they generate electricity. But how does this all, get traded?
Right.
The report talks about the Mercado de Oportunidad, which I think translates to, opportunity market.
Yeah, that's right. Think of it like a spot market for electricity.
Okay.
So, if a power plant has some extra energy, they can sell it there.
Okay.
And if ENE, the national company, needs more power, they can buy it there.
Gotcha. So it's all about balancing supply and demand in real time.
Exactly. And the prices can go up or down depending on, how much power is available and how much people need.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
it's like the stock market, but for electricity.
Kind of, yeah.
And they give all these prices in USD/kWh. I'm guessing that's US dollars per kilowatt hour.
That's right.
Okay, good to know. Now, there's this other thing. Potencia firme y sobrecosto.
Ah, yes.
And the report mentions Cisa Ella Esperanza accumulating over $643,000 related to this by December.
Yeah.
Can you explain what all that means?
Sure. So potencia firme basically means firm power. It's the guaranteed amount of power a plant can produce.
Okay.
Like a reliable baseload.
Right.
And sobrecosto, that means surcharge. It's like an extra cost. So, sometimes the system needs more power than usual. Maybe demand is high, or some cheaper plants are offline.
Right. Yeah.
So they have to use more expensive sources.
Okay.
And that costs extra. And that's where the surcharge comes in.
I see. So in the case of Cisa Ella Esperanza,
Yeah.
that's $643,000.
Yeah.
That's probably for their guaranteed power, plus some extra costs when they had to ramp up production.
That's most likely it, yeah. They're getting paid for being reliable, but also for those times when they have to go above and beyond.
Gotcha. It's like a premium for keeping the lights on.
Exactly.
So, when we talk about reliability, that can actually get pretty pricey.
It can, for sure.
And speaking of money, the total transactions in this Mercado de Oportunidad Nacional, it was over $17 million by December. That's a lot of buying and selling.
Yeah, that's a lot of activity. It shows you how dynamic this market really is. They're constantly adjusting, buying and selling to make sure there's enough power for everyone.
Makes sense. Now, the report also had this section about Balance de Energía del Sistema Interconectado Nacional,
Okay.
which I guess means like the balance of energy in the national grid.
Yeah, basically.
And there's this example of EA's own hydro generation in January.
Yeah,
And it says they were paid a certain rate for it.
right.
So it sounds like they're buying power from themselves.
It does sound a bit strange, right?
Yeah.
But it's really about keeping things transparent. Even though EN owns the hydro plant, the energy it produces goes into the national grid.
Okay.
And they get paid for it, just like any other tower producer.
I see.
It's about creating a level playing field and making sure everyone is compensated fairly.
Makes sense. So it's more about accounting than actually buying their own power.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all part of managing a complex system.
Okay, that clears that up.
Yeah.
Now, no energy system is perfect.
Right.
And the report actually spends a good amount of time on eventos de salida de servicio y no disponibilidad de plantas.
Plant outages, yeah.
Plant outages, exactly. That's a mouthful.
It is.
So what can we learn from this section?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because it gives us a glimpse into, the reliability of the system.
Gotcha.
And it turns out there are a lot of reasons why plants can go offline.
Yeah, like what?
Well, sometimes it's planned. Like they might be conserving fuel, a horocombustible,
Okay.
or sometimes there's a general electrical fault, falla electrica.
Right.
But then there are all these specific issues too,
Yeah.
like high cooling water temperature, alta tem agua cyst, enfriam,
Oh, wow.
or low oil pressure, baja presión de aceite, mechanical stuff.
I see. So it's not just one thing. It could be a lot of different things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just internal problems either.
Really?
Yeah, they even mention external factors,
Like what?
like heavy rain in the area, Luvius and El area,
Oh, wow.
or branches falling on power lines, ramas sobre la línea.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it really highlights how vulnerable these systems can be.
It does. And there's this example they give of Unit U08 at the ENEE plant.
Right.
It had like 29 outages.
Yep. 29.
Over 105 hours offline.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost almost $1.5 million.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant impact from just one unit going down.
It is. It makes you wonder, like, how often does this kind of thing happen across the whole system?
Right.
And what does it mean for, like, consumers, in terms of prices and reliability?
Good questions. Unfortunately, the report doesn't really give us a system-wide view of, how frequent these outages are or what the overall financial impact is.
Okay.
But it does give us some clues.
Yeah, like what?
Well, there are these graphs for ENEE fallis, that's energy not supplied due to failures.
Okay.
And reducción de carga, which means load shedding,
Okay.
basically, when they have to intentionally cut power to certain areas.
Right.
And these graphs, they show us that reliability fluctuates throughout the year.
I see. So even though we don't have all the details, it's clear that outages are a real problem.
Definitely.
They can be costly and they can disrupt people's lives.
Absolutely.
Now, the last part of the report, it's about economic transactions.
Right.
And it mentions all these different charges and payments, like total transacciones de energía.
Right.
That's total energy transactions.
Yeah.
Then there's cargos por servicios del mar, which I think are fees for using the market.
Probably. Yeah. Like the cost of running the whole system.
Right.
Then there's cargo complementario, which could be like a surcharge for something specific.
Okay.
We need more info to know for sure.
Yeah. And then there's total aliquidar osum, which is like the total amount to be settled with the operators.
Yep.
And that one, it peaked in May. It's all pretty complex.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. But it essentially boils down to this. The cost of electricity in Honduras is made up of, the cost of generating it, the cost of using the market, and all these other charges and fees. It's kind of like your monthly utility bill, You've got the cost of the energy you use plus all the other stuff.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just on a much bigger scale.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ENEE's 2024 operations, I think we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Honduras relies on a mix of energy sources: hydro, thermal, geothermal, biomass, even some solar.
Yeah.
But thermal, that's still the big one.
Absolutely.
And they've got this busy energy market where they're constantly buying and selling power to meet demand.
Right.
But they also face challenges like plant outages that can be costly and disrupt service.
Yeah. Definitely key takeaways.
So what stands out to you the most?
I think for me, it's the sheer scale of thermal generation compared to everything else, and also the amount of money that's flowing through their energy market. It's a big business.
It is.
And then, the whole issue with plant outages, that really highlights how important it is to have a reliable system and how difficult that can be to achieve.
It does. It makes you think about, the future.
Yeah.
What's the ideal mix of energy sources for Honduras?
Right.
How can they improve reliability?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen to energy prices for consumers?
Yeah.
It's a lot to consider. This report, it's just a snapshot of 1 year.
Yeah.
But it raises so many important questions.
It does.
And I think those are questions that we need to keep asking.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of Honduras's power sector. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
And thank you to Portal Mi Empresa de Inversiones Urbanas y Centroamericanas for making this deep dive possible.
Yeah. Thank you to them.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.